Welcome to I Hate James Dobson, Secular Christmas Edition. Holy snow. Welcome to I Hate James Dobson, Secular Christmas Edition. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake, but this time far less scary. One more. Welcome to I Hate James Dobson, Secular Christmas Edition, where the only thing we worship is the birth of Barbra Streisand's stressful, sugar-induced version of Jingle Bells.
Oh my God, yes we do.
It's so stressful. Why is she singing it like that? She needs help.
Happy holidays, readers. Today, we have a real treat for you. A break from our normal pace of Dobson depression, a soft landing to a really hard year. Do not you fret, though, for the nightmares will continue in our very next episode, Left Behind, Part 2. For now, get cozy, get comfortable, and I'll let Brooke take it from here.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to I Hate James Dobson, a podcast devoted to hating a man I'd never even heard of until I agreed to do this podcast. That's right. I was just out here living my secular little life without a care in the world until Jake came along. I'm Brooke, an agnostic therapist who was coerced by this youth and the promise of free candy and whiskey into being a part of this podcast. Please send help. And I'm joined today, as always, by the most excellent, exceptional, and expert exvangelical queer sex therapist in all of Candyland, Jake.
Wow!
How am I doing so far?
That's brilliant.
Jake, how are you?
Oh, I am good. I am sweaty.
You're sweaty.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been running around setting this up, but
Yeah,
I
you
am
have.
excited to be here
Mhm.
and, as always, in awe of your brilliance.
Oh, okay, good. This is the part where you usually do some banter.
Yes.
Some small talk banter.
Oh, that's my job now. Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I have to give you a question.
Yeah.
So, what sort of winter activities have you been engaging in?
What have I been doing? Do I have friends? I'm excited to go ice skating in Maggie Daly Park.
Ooh, are you a good ice skater?
No.
Oh.
Which is part of the fun.
Have you ever ice scat along the ribbon?
I've not done that along the ribbon, but I've definitely ice skated along the ribbon, yes.
I never have. I heard it's fun.
It's a lot of standing in line.
Mm.
You wait a long time to go around, but it's a good time.
Okay, good.
Oh, the Christmas markets are some of my favorite things.
Yes, you like German things.
I do. I lived in Germany for a
That's
period
what
of
I
time.
was going to
Yes.
say, and then I wasn't sure if we could say that. Do you like to go to Kris Crinkle cans?
I do.
Yeah?
It's a surprisingly accurate representation of German Christmas markets.
Oh.
All things considered, it's still very American and small, but it gives me that warm. I feel like someone's going to like shove me out of the way and not apologize for it, which is the German Christmas spirit.
Do you know about something called the German stare?
Oh, like German stare?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just learned about it because I've been exploring my German roots.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't know anything about being German because I'm adopted. I've been learning that there's a thing called the German stare. Can you tell me about it?
So I don't know it in a formal context. I just know that when you are acting a fool as a loud, stupid American, which many Americans do quite often in Germany, the Germans give you the most withering stare, and it makes you want to cry, but then that's going to cause even more noise and commotion, so you just kind of die a little bit inside.
I've been told that I do this, so I really feel connected to my roots. Okay, last question. Is Christmas in Germany all it's cracked up to be? Is it magical and special and amazing?
It is pretty cool. Germany is a very cool place
Great.
to be and to live. And you really do feel like you're living in a fairy tale in a lot of ways. And I would like to move back one day.
Have you ever been to London during Christmas?
Yeah, I was over Christmas. Yes.
Yeah, was that? I've heard that's also very magical.
I didn't care. I was too young to think like, wow, this is so cool. It's like, oh, traveling with my family. Meh.
Well, and that kind of leads us into what we're talking about today.
Uh-huh.
Because you were like, Christmas.
Yes, my family does Christmas and we do it right.
Well, let's talk about that. All right, Jake, here's what I have to say. Jake, I don't know if you are familiar with the expression, turnabout is fair play, but that is what we will be doing here today. That's right, everyone. I'm taking over the podcast today to teach Jake and all of our readers about growing up under the umbrella of the one true Sky Daddy, Santa Claus. Woo! No purity balls, all jingle bells.
Satan Claus?
Santa Claus. Do you know the lyrics to Jingle Bells, Batman Smells?
And Robin laid an egg?
So how do you know that?
Because I went to public school.
Oh, right. So you're going to know some things. The same way a little Dobson creeped into my life now and then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Despite our parents' best efforts.
That's right. So season's greetings, my little elves. Get your pink holiday Starbucks cups ready. We are going to take the Christ out of Christmas and learn all about the reason for the secular season. Presents, stories, and ham.
Heck yeah. The ham's my favorite part.
Well, yeah, you love a ham.
I do love ham.
Okay, this is usually the part where Jake pulls a frightening book out of his bag and hands it to me, and then I scream in horror and question all my choices.
Uh-huh.
So, Jake, I'm going to be pulling out a very important book.
I'm actually most excited for this part.
From my childhood for you. The Norman Rockwell Christmas
Whoa.
Stories book. This is the actual book
That's
that I had.
beautiful.
Yeah, and I cannot wait to walk you through it. It is the actual book I had as a child that I would pull off the shelf and play with and look at and read all year long, especially around Christmas. And it, I think, really informed the way that I think of Christmas, which is in 3 parts, and which we're going to talk about, which is nostalgia and tradition, that Christmas story part, which you might be familiar with.
I think I got that part down.
And I can't wait to tell you about that part. And a 3rd part that I call cookies and Chardonnay, which I will get into. All right. So I will let you look at this book.
This is a good book. It's nice and thick.
It used to have one of those really good plasticky covers.
Yeah.
But that got lost along the way.
Oh, it's really nice to have a book for this podcast that doesn't make me have a panic attack when I touch it.
Yeah, me too. What you're looking at right now, though, is really funny. So that book, I basically have the whole book memorized. Every single picture, every single page, it's full of stories. It's full of Christmas carols. It's full of poems. And I remember all of it except for about the first 20 pages, which when I pulled this off the shelf, I didn't remember at all because I refer to that as the boring part.
I have the book open right now. The first 30 pages are labeled The First Christmas.
Yeah. And not only did I call it the boring part, but so did my brother and my mom. We would pull this book down off the shelf at Christmas, skip the boring part, and go right into the rest of it. So that, I will get to that more later, but that made me laugh so hard. Because I was like, wait, I don't remember this book at all. And there's a lot more religion than I thought. And then I was like, oh, right, we skipped the whole first chapter. I also want you to know that this is continues to this day when my nephews were babies. And, oh, God, I should be careful saying this. Well, they're not listening. When my nephews were babies and their other family, the in-law family, would buy them Bible stories and they would ask us to read them, we would make them up and just turn the pages. Be like, this guy was helping this guy, his boyfriend, go to the store. And we would just make up the whole story.
Incredible.
Yeah. The first part I want to talk about with secular Christmas is something I think of as nostalgia and tradition. So that book is from like the 50s, maybe the 60s. I think it was my mom's and then it became ours. But I really want to talk about this kind of turn that happened from Christmas, secular Christmas, or even just Christmas in general, the way it was celebrated before World War II, and then how it changed drastically after World War II. Christmas was like a thing you would do with your family. You would go to church. You would get pennies and oranges and terrible presents.
I knew about the oranges. I didn't know about the pennies.
Yeah. And it was kind of a small religious holiday. After World War II, the whole aesthetic changed because secular Christmas was actually pushed, right? They wanted it.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was capitalism. It was America. It was songs like I'll Be Home for Christmas and victory kind of songs, right? White Christmas. It became a lot about the season and the snow and the weather and shopping for presents and opulence, right? Also, interestingly, there were some things going on at this time, like technology. You had lights on your trees for the first time.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
You had a whole different aesthetic for Christmas than there was before. So it went from being this kind of quaint, I think of it as like It's a Wonderful Life, this kind of quaint black and white spirit of Christmas, to like White Christmas, which I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's real over the top.
I have not seen it.
Okay, well, you're going to watch that.
Wait, when did Coke invent Santa?
That's exactly in here. Oh, that's fun when that happens. Coke invented Santa in the 20s.
Wow.
And they really did. They based off the poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, which is now called 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, by Clement Clarke Moore, starting in the 20s.
Incredible.
But Coke did invent the image of Santa that we still have today. So you may have seen old Victorian Santa who was tall and skinny in a long robe. And then we have Coca-Cola jolly red-cheeked Santa. And it's usually he's holding a Coke. And it's pure advertising. In
Germany, they celebrate St. Nicholas's Day.
Yes.
And it's much earlier in December.
Guess when it is?
December 6th?
Today.
Happy St. Nicholas Day. We're recording on December 4th.
Yeah.
Happy St. Nicholas Day. Man, I should leave my boots out.
Yeah. Here's what's funny. We also celebrate St. Nicholas Day in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I'm from, because it's so heavily German. And my parents were transplants to Milwaukee and had no idea what that was. So about every single year, all my friends would come to school with their little shoes that had been filled with stuff, and I had nothing.
That's tragic.
And my mom would feel really terrible and then buy me a guilt St. Nick present later. It was fun. And when I had a roommate later in life, I made him do St. Nick's Day with me, and I forgot to fill his shoes. So.
That's the real tradition. The real spirit of Christmas.
That's the real spirit of Christmas. Yep. So more decorations, new traditions, new songs. Christmas kind of got a reboot. Okay. Like I said, more technology and a whole new Christmas aesthetic. Lots more advertising and a lot more capitalism. So buy presents, buy outfits, throw parties. Right. This was a big thing. And people were celebrating because it was post-war.
Back when the world still had hope.
Back when life was still worth living. You could sell more. It was not a solemn, quiet family thing, church thing as much anymore. Secular Christmas really came into the spotlight. So people were still Christian. They were still religious. There was always kind of a wink to God at the end of the movies. Like, and also, by the way, Jesus.
And also Jesus.
Right? But mostly he was left out of it.
That's
honestly
fascinating. The timeline is really interesting because 30-year nostalgia cycles, the 30-year nostalgia cycle of that would be Dobson.
Interesting. That's so interesting. Yeah. So what I was reading was like neutralizing the religious part of Christmas and really hammering home on the kind of like big, bright, glossy side of Christmas, right? And really, like I said, celebrating the season, right? Winter, Frosty the Snowman, all of that. And then I wrote here, a lot more focus on the family.
Wow.
That's the nostalgia part. Any questions about that part, Jake? What do you think about that?
I did not realize the impact that World War II had. So when I lived in Germany, we would go explore World War II monuments around Christmas because big fucking nerds in my family. And I remember walking around the Battle of the Bulge area, which is made famous by the Battle of the Bulge, but also more modernly by Band of Brothers, the miniseries.
Oh, yeah.
And we would go there, I think we were there 2 out of 3 years around Christmas time, and just walking around in the cold.
Yeah.
Miserable, horrible experience. I'm like 10 years old and feel like I'm going to die. We did the short version of it. It took all day. I can imagine people like U.S. veterans returning home and be like, I want nothing to do with that. Give me warmth, give me light, bring me joy.
Yes. That's exactly right. And they actually deliberately, now listen, readers, I'm a little bit of a Dobson in that, like, I use the internet. So, you know what?
When you say a little bit of a Dobson, like, your fact checking is a little bit faster.
Yeah, like, don't go up in yourselves about the fact checking. But I did Google some things, and they shipped a lot of the boys home on Christmas Day, specifically, like, on purpose.
Wow.
Yeah, so that Christmas could really become this, like, whole thing.
That's really interesting.
Which is why it's so funny, because a lot of my life I was like, why do I have Christmas connected to like the 50s so much in my head, right? Like all these movies and just the general aesthetic and the Santa with the Coke bottle and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
The fact that history is so recent, I think, is something that is so weird to think about so often.
Yeah. I was born in 1979. So that's just like a little bit after this, which always feels really weird. I'm like, what? That's very strange. Yeah. The second part of this book that I'm now going to talk about is the boring part.
Yay! I know this part.
The boring part is the religious part of Christmas. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my religious background, which I've referenced on this podcast before, but let me give it to you straight. So my father was Episcopalian. He was converted Episcopalian. I don't even know what he was before that. And my mom, who I talked to yesterday before doing this, and we had such a lovely conversation, told me that she was technically Protestant before she converted to Episcopalian for my dad. But that really what she and her family called it was casual Christian.
Yeah. Yep.
She also said they referred to it as Christmas and Easter.
Exactly what I was going to say. Literally Christmas and Easter. Yep.
Yeah. She said my mom grew up in New York. She said they'd like go into the city, have a nice lunch, go to church, right? Do the things.
Cute.
And then go home. But she was like praying and that kind of stuff was never part of their lives. They didn't do that before dinner. There weren't crosses in their house, like that kind of stuff. And same with me. So when I came into this world, my mom was basically like kind of Episcopalian for my dad. My dad was kind of Episcopalian. He more than her, but they both were just like, whatever. This is just what you kind of do. They went to church sometimes and not very often. My dad was more religious, but neither of my parents ever talked to us about it at all, which I find interesting. And I asked my mom about that, and she was like, well, I just didn't care or really believe it. Yeah. And then my dad was just very private and considered religion to be a private thing that's your own experience, if you want it or not.
I guess I didn't realize your dad converted to being Episcopalian like in and around your childhood. Or even before you were born.
Before, but he and his mother would have converted probably when he was in high school or something.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Catholic light. They call it. So when I was growing up, there was Christmas, which I will say like, quote, Christmas. It was just a combination of all kinds of things. Christmas was snow. It was snowman, it was reindeer, it was Santa, it was this guy Jesus Christ, which I will talk about in a minute. It was Coca-Cola, right? It was Hanukkah, right? Because my parents got divorced, and then my mom's best friend was Jewish and would like light the Hanukkah candles, and we would sing along, and he would teach us all about Hanukkah, and he was with us most years, right? So it was just like winter, and like winter solstice. It was whatever happens in winter was Christmas.
Yeah.
Right? Including, but not exclusively, baby Jesus.
We had Christmas and there's Christmas.
Yeah. That's kind of how we said it.
Yeah.
We would, like, as a kid, I'd be like, well, I celebrate Christmas, but I don't celebrate like Christmas. Right? So that's what it was. I think that like at a certain point in college, when I cared a little bit more, I was like, well, I'm not Christian, so I'm not saying Merry Christmas to anybody. How dare they assume that? And then I finally was like, just get over it. Like it's
There's a bit of that, yeah.
Yeah. So that was fine. I talked to my mom about this yesterday, and it was so funny because I was like, well, we didn't have like crosses and stuff in our house, but we did have like at Christmas we had like my mom collects angels that are really beautiful. We had one of those. They're German. What are they called? You spin them around with candles.
Oh my gosh. I know what you're talking about.
Ours was really beautiful. And my brother and I would take turns grabbing it by the top and spinning it really fast until all the shepherds flew off.
Yep.
And my mom always thought it was just my brother, but mostly it was me. Sorry,
the
Mom.
truth comes out.
And then my mom told me, she said, well, that giant piece of art we've always had is the birth of Christ. And I was like, what?
What?
Yeah. So I looked it up. I'll show it to you in a second. But we have this huge triptych that has been in our house my whole entire life that just looks like this piece of folk art of like a fishing town But actually, if you look closely, there's a manger at the top and a little star, and it's Christmas.
Bethlehem.
Yeah. And I was like, why do we have that? And my mom said, well, I just thought it was a really nice picture and I bought it. And it took me years before I realized it was Christmas. Right. And I was like, okay. She said, I just liked it as a piece of art. The picture, for anyone who wants to look it up, is called A Time for Dancing by Graham Clark. It's really beautiful. I'll show it to you in a second. But yeah, that was kind of it. It took me a long time to look at it and realize. So Jesus was sort of there, and Christmas was sort of there in this like very nuanced way. Probably in the way that like some of my stuff was there for you in the background.
Yeah.
Right. We were saying last night, my mom and I, that like it wasn't not part of our Christmas. It was just a nice story that went with Christmas. But it wasn't a story we believed in as a reality. It was like a parable or a fable or any other story, right? And it went along with Christmas. And frankly, I always thought of like the birth of Jesus less as like this one individual person who got born, and more kind of like the birth of like humanity, people, wonderment, spirits, angels, all of this, right? And so to me, it was this really beautiful story about like innocence, babies, childhood, wonderment, and then this guy Jesus represented that to me, right? And I always thought it was nice, but I
really like that.
Yeah, well, we weren't worshiping him.
You weren't hearing stories about how that little baby Jesus was going to die for your sins 33 years later in a brutal, violent death by the state.
No,
that wasn't part of your Christmas sermon.
I think it took me a really long time to connect that baby Jesus from Christmas is also Jesus from Christianity, right? Like that took me kind of a minute as a kid to be like, oh, that's not what I thought. My mom said this really interesting thing that I agree with, which was we didn't really ever read the Bible. Of course, we knew about Jesus and who he was, and we knew about him in relation to Christmas. And she said, I always thought Jesus was a really nice symbol of like radical love and how to be super accepting and open and love radically and love everyone, even people that were not, getting a lot of love. And she said it was so inspiring when she was growing up. And I sort of felt that way when I was growing up. And I understood Jesus and Christianity to be this sort of like hippie-like love festival, right? I even asked her, I said, do you think that belief impacted you or influenced you into becoming more of like a Democrat and a liberal? And she said, yeah. Right. So it's not that she believed in Christianity, but she did like this aspect of Christianity and of the Bible that was like so far away from like James Dobson. And the Christianity that we've been talking about, the evangelicalism.
Absolutely. It's so interesting because hearing that, part of me still has the like evangelical training of like, well, that's the problem with kids these days. But also the like significantly more mature part of me is like, that is not only very tender and meaningful and personal, it also is like, I think really important to have the conversation around Christianity because it isn't just the James Dobsons of the world. I think that's a super valid way to engage with religion and spirituality. Clearly it was very meaningful for her.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, it was a story like a lot of stories. Like I have that same response to the story about like the scorpion and the tortoise, right? I get very emotional telling that story. And I'm like, this is a very important story, right?
Yeah.
And that lives in the same part of my brain as like Bible story, right? And so, yeah, but the Jesus that we not believe in, but that we think about is like a Jesus who would be like radically loving of everyone.
Which is also a very valid reading of the actual text of the Bible, too.
Right. Yeah. So what I was saying was like Jesus kind of representing birth, representing life starting in general. Silent Night, Away in a Manger, those kinds of songs that are like, to me, were always about like childhood, right? And the miracle of life. My mom and I spoke about the awkwardness of prayer. And how we both have tried it at different times in our life and just been like, what are we? This is weird. It feels weird and it feels inauthentic, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, I think my version of that is kind of like speaking hope out loud.
Yeah. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that we talked about that my mom said was, also I'm talking about my mom a lot because I'm making up for the time I said she spanked us. She's never listened to the podcast since. Love you, Mom.
We love you, Brooke's mom.
What's my mom's name? No, you can't say that in the podcast.
Oh, what name do you want to give her?
Yeah.
How
about Blair?
Blair's good.
Okay. So what she said was her philosophy, and it's mine too, and it makes sense because she raised me.
Mm-hmm.
All religion is founded on the fear of death. And this can be used to provide meaning for your life, or it can be used to provide fear and power and control over other people.
Yeah.
It's such a profound fear. And to be a person without religion, we've talked about this on this podcast, the one very hard part of that is to not have a framework for what happens to you after you die.
Yeah.
Right. And I have talked to people who are ex-evangelical like you, and I'm curious about your experience with this, where I'm a grief counselor, and when I talk to people who are experiencing grief for the first time after leaving religion, right, and how shocking and painful it is to realize, like, ooh, I don't have a framework anymore for where this person is now, right?
I think this is a fascinating conversation to have with you specifically, given that you are a thanatologist. You're so focused, like your expertise is in grief and loss. And yeah, for me, I find a lot of comfort in the meaninglessness of it. Like the fact that you die and that's the end, I think is actually really comforting to me. Especially in adulthood, the idea of eternity is horrific to me. Infinity doesn't make sense to my brain, and I don't think I'd like to live infinity. Thank you very much.
That's like when I see space videos, I'm like, too big.
Yes. I get the same feeling about like the ocean. I also think that there's a relative level of certainty in that for me, of like, okay, well, that's the end, and then we can talk about like love is not a thing you can capture, and love persists even after a person dies. And I don't believe in like a physical soul, but like the metaphorical idea of a soul, I think is really meaningful. But yeah, that was something that I had to grapple with and did a lot of therapy about, of like, what do you mean if it's not this? What do you mean it's nothing?
Yeah.
Can it be nothing? That doesn't seem possible. That doesn't seem acceptable.
Yeah. It's really interesting for me to talk to grief clients, and depending on their religious history, to sort of gauge how they're feeling about things, right? And sometimes there can be this like nihilistic point in grief of like, well, why bother doing anything, right? I remember feeling that. I had a brother who died young, and I was like, well, then what was even the point of him being here? Because he didn't even get to have a whole life, you know?
Yeah.
But then I think there's this other way of kind of thinking about it, which is like, right, so there is an end, and therefore the meaning is in the life part.
Yes, very much that. The fact that it ends means that there's meaning to be had now. Yeah.
And I think that's what makes me saddest when I look at things like evangelical and really, what's the word I'm looking for? Strict religious, like where it's all about preparing yourself for the afterlife, because I'm like, eek, that doesn't fit my value system because there is no afterlife. And so it's, to me, it's like, oh no, you're missing it. Right?
Yeah.
From my perspective.
The truism is like, life is what happens while you're making other plans.
Yes.
I think the hardcore evangelical eschatology, like what happens at the end of the world when we die, is the like height of that.
Right.
You're so busy trying to save souls and save the world and do all this that you're missing what's going on here and now.
Right.
And the life that you get to have on earth.
Yeah. Also, the fear of death is so strong. You see it in animals, you see it in humans, you see it in any living thing. And the fight for survival and the fight for life is often so strong that you can also see how easy it would be to coerce people and to say, like, here, I'm going to provide you this huge comfort for your life that is, you know, this amazing heavenly afterlife. But I'm going to do it by controlling you here in this environment. And
I think the individual fear of death is real, but I think something a lot more powerful is the fear of other people's death.
Yeah.
And I think most intense fucked up stuff that I've seen for people like trying to avoid it is like, I'm doing this so that my loved one doesn't die. I'm believing in all this not just evangelical stuff. I'm believing all this is bullshit, so I don't actually have to let go of my dad.
Right.
I can die and it's whatever, but I can't let my brother, my dad, my spouse die.
Yeah, it's hard to be agnostic or atheist and grieve. It really is. It is the one place where my mom said this, I've said this, where you do kind of wish you had some kind of a foundation, right? I think, I was out recently because there was a death, and that's the hardest part, to be like, okay, that person is just gone from the world, right? And it is hard to just think that without thinking like, and that's it. It's tough. Well, that was sad.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. So anyway, what we do is we get right back to Santa. Okay, here's a funny thing. Religious Christmas music and how that functions for the non-religious celebrator.
I'm fascinated by this because it's hard for me to listen to most Christmas music now.
I love Christmas music. Once again, Christmas music to me, if I were to say my most favorite Christmas songs, it would be Oh Holy Night, Feliz Navidad.
Okay.
And I don't know, some other ones, right?
Those two.
They all go together. Barbra Streisand's Jingle Bells, right? They literally all work at the same. Now, this is not true for every person, right? But this is how my family is and my brain is. We love them all. They all mean this time of year and Christmas. Again, the Christ part is sort of like the Rudolph part of the other songs. It's like, yeah, that guy.
Sure.
Sure. Like, do it. I think everyone cries at Oh Holy Night, no matter who you are, no matter where you are in your religious journey.
See, I'm not an Oh Holy Night fan.
That is the saddest song. I don't even know the words. It's always in Latin.
I am a Silent Night fan.
Oh, Silent Night is so good.
This is something part of the like reclamation, reconstruction of myself has been like, actually my favorite Christmas tradition is to be singing Silent Night with people in a church by candlelight.
Yeah, that's pretty.
I don't care for the rest of the service, but like that part is my favorite part.
Yeah. Of Christmas. I like carolers who sing Silent Night. I love Silent Night. It's beautiful. But once again, like growing up, it was like, this is just like a beautiful song about a baby.
And to me now, the lyrics are less important, but like the melodies and the way that like the music theory behind it works that's really interesting and moving and like.
Oh, you know what my other one is? Carol of the Bells.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I was playing that last night.
Feliz Navidad makes me cry every time I hear it because it was part of the 1974, for olds who are listening, it's part of the 1974 Sesame Street Christmas special.
Aww.
I was born after 1974. Thank you very much. But I watched that all the time as a kid. You should watch it someday. You'll also cry. Big Bird, Ice Skates, and to Feliz Navidad, and it makes you cry.
I love that.
Do you want to know an interesting song?
Yes.
An interesting fact about a song. A lot of carols, Christmas carols, were ripped off and co-opted from like pagan and different cultural places, right?
That does not surprise me.
And the best example is What Child Is This? Do you know that song?
Da, 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 da.
So that's actually an Irish song called Green Sleeves.
It feels Irish.
Yeah. And it's green sleeves, my blee, blee, blee. I don't know all the words. But it's about a man who's in love with a woman he calls Green Sleeves.
Aww.
Okay? Yeah. Guess why women were called Green Sleeves during those times?
Because they had really long flowy dresses?
Nope. Because they had dresses that would turn green because they were prostitutes and they were doing it outside in the grass. And so prostitutes were referred to as green sleeves or green dresses. So that is a song about prostitutes in Ireland and how much this man loves his prostitutes.
And God bless sex workers, unironically.
And God bless sex workers. And everyone go listen to Green Sleeves. It's a hell of a song, right? But I love there's so many versions of things like that existed first. Mm-hmm. Christmas trees, another example.
I know about more of the like trees and wreaths and stuff.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The date of Christmas is not Jesus' birth. That's a whole thing.
Right. Yep. And so all of that taken from all different customs and cultures and places is really interesting. But listen to Green Sleeves. Also, what child is this? Jesus, duh.
Answer's right there, guys.
So that's that part. Any questions about the boring part?
Do you have a favorite version of the Christmas story? Because it's told different ways and different...
Here's the version I know.
Okay.
And it's the only version I know. And I had no idea there were different versions. Mary was a pregnant 13-year-old. Yeah. She got knocked up by, quote, God. I think maybe Mary was... We don't know. But
She
God,
was a virgin, I hear.
yeah. Virgin had a different meaning back then.
Mm.
And it meant, now someone has to look this up. This is an old thing I remember. But it meant a woman who had not yet menstruated. Not a woman who had not had sex.
Interesting.
And so what they are sort of saying is that she was very young and believed to have not yet menstruated.
Fascinating.
But she had, and Joseph not. Anyway, the story I know is that very young Mary is pregnant, and Joseph is her husband, and they travel around for a long time, and they can't find anywhere to sleep and have a baby, and they get to an inn, and the innkeeper won't let them in, and they go in a manger. Jake's like laughing so hard. And they go in a manger, and there's a donkey, because this was part of our nativity that we had. Our nativity set is so old and so small that, and over time we have taken out some characters and added other ones.
Mm-hmm.
So this really sums up the Christmas story at my house. There's like a little baby Jesus whose face is rubbed off. There's a Mary and a Joseph. There is a pirate Lego.
One of the three wise men.
Yeah. There's a gigantic Christmas angel that's just one of my mom's. It's like all over the place. I think there's a chess piece. Like it's a lot. So then Mary has a baby. That baby is Jesus. Then you like pour one out for stepdads. I have an amazing stepdad who I love very much. So I was always very pro Joseph.
Pro Joseph.
I was like, hell yeah, Joseph, taking on that baby that's not even yours. Great job. We love stepdads. Shout out. What a stepdad to be. Oh my God.
He was the dad that stepped up.
Yeah, he was a dad that stepped up. Also, he was a dad.
Yeah.
But still.
Likely.
And then even though nobody would let her into their inn for some reason, people came from far and wide to give the baby, like help the baby join an MLM and sell essential oils. And,
if you buy this gold, you can then sell it to your friends and you'll get a commission.
Yeah. So then there was three wise men and then something Star of David, but that part is less clear to me. And then that's all you ever hear. And then cut to Jesus is 33 and a carpenter. But like what? Nothing about in between. We don't get the Hogwarts days.
We don't get the Hogwarts days.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the broad strokes for sure.
Okay.
Different books of the Bible will focus on different things. Also, I have so many unhelpful fun facts. I watched a documentary, and I'm not an astrologer, so I have no idea how true this is, but like they thought the Star of David was a planetary event, and it's when Venus moves in this way. I don't know. People try really hard to make things happen. But the Magi, the wise men, found
Oh, that's what the Magi are?
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They were astronomers largely, and if we're going by the text of the Bible, they found Jesus when he was about 3.
Oh.
And in Egypt.
Interesting.
The reason there was no room for them in the inn is the king at the time ordered a census, so everyone had to go back to the town that their family was from. So they got there late, and everything was booked, and that's why there's no room for them in the inn.
Interesting.
But then the wise men came to the king and said, "Hey, we're looking for the new king, the King of Kings." So the
that's my other favorite Christmas song, Hallelujah Choir.
Oh yeah, Hallelujah, yeah.
King of Kings. Okay.
The king ordered all babies murdered.
Oh, well, that's a dark part of Christmas.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so then Jesus and his family had to flee to Egypt.
Wow, that's a lot.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, so
There's a lot of child murder in the Bible. Anyway.
Maybe I'll skip that book. All right. Third and final part of my secular Christmas surprise. Cookies and Chardonnay. This is the Santa part.
I'm so excited.
Okay. So I grew up believing in Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a real bone to pick. Oh, that was so Wisconsin. A real bone to pick.
Don't you know?
Don't you know? With people who don't let their kids have Santa Claus. I get very angry about that.
See more.
Well, people have this idea of like, I don't want to lie to my children. And then they get older and they realize I've been lying to them. And I'm like, it's not that deep.
No.
Okay. I grew up believing in Santa. I am grateful that my parents did that and they did a good job of it. And kind of a funny job, but they did a good job of it. And I am grateful that they provided me with that experience as a kid. It was magical.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun. It allowed me to consider bigger things. It allowed me to be creative and curious about how that would have worked. kids talked about it together, and it was just magical.
Yeah.
And you would go to bed. Every house was a little different how they did it. Our house, we got to open one present on Christmas Eve.
Nice.
And then you'd go to bed. And then at some point in the night, my dad would like jingle the jingle bells, right? And then we had to stay in our rooms, and it was a big deal if you left your room. And then the next day, you would pop out of bed at like 6 a.m.
Yep.
some horrible hour, and run downstairs. And for me, I will say, we were privileged kids. The whole living room would be just like full of stuff, like toys. And there was, there was 2 of us. Later, there was more of us, and it was just filled. And my parents would separate, like, these are mom and dad presents and these are Santa presents. And you opened your Santa presents, and they were like things that could be made at a workshop, right? So dollhouse furniture or teddy bears or things like that. And then you would open your mom and dad presents, and that'd be like Barbies and G.I. Joes and store stuff. Right? It was fun. And you slowly figured it out over time. It wasn't just, it would be different for everybody. But you started to put it together like, well, what?
Yeah.
How does this work?
Every house?
How does it make sense? And then if you're like me, you start to really suspect what might be going on here, and you start observing a little bit more. And then you find price tags on the bottom of your tea set, and you throw a little fit. And you do have one rough Christmas where you say, you've been lying to me this whole time. And then your parents, if they're nice, are gentle about it. And then what we got to do, because I told my older brother when I found out, he wasn't so quick on the uptake, so I let him know. But then what we got to do the next year was be part of Santa and set it all up for our younger sibling. So that was so fun. That was like one of the most fun Christmases. Like, we got to see them put out the cookies and we got to eat the Santa cookies and do all of it. It just felt so cool.
I love that.
At my mom's house, we left Santa cookies and Chardonnay.
Oh, actual cookies and Chardonnay.
Yeah. Mom doesn't like milk, and mom gets what mom wants. So cookies and Chardonnay. And she'd always say, I think by the time Santa gets to our house, he just could use a little glass of wine.
I think that's fair. I think that's good logic. If we're to believe NORAD, Santa comes to the United States last.
Oh, interesting. Well, then he could really use that wine. As a therapist, I have never so far had to treat anyone whose childhood trauma is that their parents lied to them about Santa.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
I've had, in a lot of ways, a very privileged childhood, but in some ways, some difficult moments. Finding out Santa isn't real doesn't even crack the top 20.
It's not even a thing.
No.
I've had to treat people who discovered there is no Jesus.
A little bit of a harder take, yeah. And
I honestly think that I would probably have to treat people whose parents didn't give them any Santa, because I feel like that would suck. All your friends are doing this thing with their parents that's sort of like fun and magical, and because your parents are so practical and you don't get it, I don't know. It kind of sucks. I really encourage my friends who have kids to do Santa. I'm like, it's not that big. Like, just do it. I loved it. Did you have Santa?
We did, thankfully, which is also a highlight of Christmas and my childhood. My younger brother, Tyler, was sick a number of times around Christmas. And so where my parents live, Santa will come around to various neighborhoods in a fire truck.
Aww.
And he was in the hospital one time. And so he missed it. And he also loves firefighters and the fire department. And so they made a special trip just out to see him with Santa in the fire truck for Christmas.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. He is old now and does not believe in Santa.
Yeah. But
that still is one of his favorite memories.
I love that. I know a lot of my favorite memories are about that too. I was at my friend's store the other day in Andersonville, and like a bus went by that had a Santa on the top. And there was a kid in the store at the time. And I went, oh, look, Santa. And the kid flew out of the store, ran down the street. His mom had to go running after him. And when he came back, he was like, I saw him. I didn't get to talk to him, but I saw him. And I just was like, I got teared up because I was like, God, I remember that. That was so fun.
Yeah.
And he was really at that age where he's probably not going to believe a lot longer. And he really looked at us and was like, why weren't you all excited? Like, how come you guys weren't that excited? And I just remember asking questions like that as a kid, and people being like, it changes when you're an adult. Like, it fades. It goes different. And just being like, whoa, that must be terrible.
Feels very Polar Express-y.
Yes, very Polar Express-y. So anyway, please let your kids have Santa. They're not going to go to therapy and be mad about it.
Yeah.
I did not believe in any other mythical thing.
I was going to say Tooth Fairy kind of fucked me up.
Tooth Fairy? Why'd she want all those teeth?
Oh, exactly.
Well, why? What was she doing? There was really no explanation. Santa has a big lore and a legacy and a whole situation. Tooth Fairy, I'm like, are you big or little? Are you scary or nice? Or like, what's the story?
How do you get the teeth? What are you doing with the teeth?
Why do you have all that money? Are you selling the teeth?
Some parents keep their kids' teeth.
It's weird.
Do it if you want, I suppose. But it is weird.
Do whatever you want. Anyway, Easter Bunny made 0 sense to me.
We also believed in the Easter Bunny.
We'd never believed in it. It was the same thing, but less. Because we were, like I said, we weren't Christian. So we were like, Easter isn't a thing. There's no carols.
Yeah.
And so like bunnies were nice. We had like spring decorations.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got an Easter basket, but I never believed a bunny. It's like, how did that happen?
Yeah. But also, none of this was traumatizing.
None of it was traumatizing. It was all fine.
Yeah.
The funny thing about the Easter Bunny was, like, Santa was a man. He wore a suit, but he was like a human man. So that, my brain could understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a bunny coming to my house, or like the Easter Bunny at the mall. I was like, well, clearly that's like a dude in a bunny suit. Like, I'm not going to go sit on that guy's lap. Like, so yeah, didn't register for me. And then Christmas dinner, we get the good ham. That's the best part.
Mm-hmm.
Love a ham. And we toast instead of praying.
Nice.
And we toast each other, and we toast to our year, and we toast to the people we've lost. And we do a lot of toasts, and we toast to whoever cooked. And then my stepdad jokingly toasts to whoever's going to clean up, and then looks at me, and I don't do it, but it's funny. And it's just nice. And there's always a great deal of ham. Then you start to outgrow Christmas a little bit. When kids start to grow up, it's a little less fun. It's a little less magical. My parents got divorced, and so we would have 2 Christmases, and it felt a little complicated sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun having lots of presents, but you were very aware of like the other house of parents that had no kids in it. And, you know, my dad was really funny. When we were teenagers for Christmas one year, he gave my sister a car ashtray as if to say, I know you're smoking in your car.
My God.
Yeah. So then it became like
passive-aggressive present.
Oh yeah. It was really funny. We have it on video too. I'll show it to you sometime. It's so funny. But she's like, what? Why?
Wow, it's so
Okay.
weird.
And, you know, then you have like teen Christmas. People wake up later. They don't really come in to the living room right away. It gets a little bit like sadder,
Mm-hmm.
really. In my adulthood, I have gone home for Christmas. I've not gone home for Christmas. Thanksgiving is really more of our holiday. Sometimes I've just spent Christmas alone in my apartment and done nothing. Sometimes I've traveled. It's not like a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that's been interesting is I've been living in Chicago for 20 some years now. And when I moved here, I got my own Christmas tree and I started collecting my own Christmas ornaments. And I took home some of my Christmas ornaments from like childhood. And now when I unpack my own box of Christmas stuff, it's like I get nostalgic for my own ornaments from when I was like in my 20s.
Yeah.
And that feels really special to be like, oh, this is like from my life and my own traditions that I've had. So single lady Christmas is real. And it's great. And then what happens is like people start having kids. And you get to do it all over again,
Mm-hmm.
but as an adult. And that's really fun to watch. They're older now, but I loved watching my nieces and nephews at Christmas and just being like tearing into everything and being so excited. And it was great. So where I'm going to end is, in summary, secular Christmas for me, and it was different for everyone, is about parables, stories, poems, songs, folklore, wonder, tradition, childhood. These are the big things, and snow. And what I want to do is read an excerpt from something.
Okay.
I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read an excerpt because we've had some excerpts on this before. I'll probably cry when I read this, but this is my most favorite Christmas thing. I'm sure you've heard it. It's Yes, Virginia, There is a Santa Claus.
Yes.
Do you know it?
I do.
This is a letter that was written by an 8-year-old girl in 1897. She asked her father if Santa Claus was real, and he said, ask the Sun Times.
I didn't realize it was that old.
Yeah. He said, not the Sun Times, the Sun. He said, if you see it in the sun, it's so. And so she asks, and the response is, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. He exists as certainly as love and generosity and devotion exist. and you know that they abound and give to your life its highest beauty and joy. Alas, how dreary would the world be if there were no Santa Claus. It would be as dreary as if there were no Virginias. There would be no childlike faith then, no poetry, no romance to make tolerable this existence. We should have no enjoyment except in sense and sight. The eternal light with which childhood fills the world would be extinguished. No Santa Claus. Thank God he lives and lives forever. 1,000 years from now, Virginia. Nay, 10 times, 10,000 years from now, he will continue to make glad the heart of childhood. Isn't that so beautiful?
That's beautiful.
And people have tried to make that into Jesus.
Yep. They
and
sure have.
They have very adamantly come out and been like, that is not what it is. It is not about Jesus. It's about Santa Claus and childhood. So Jake, yes, Jake, there is a Santa Claus. And he is beautiful, and you are beautiful. And happy holidays, and Merry Christmas, and season's greetings. Mwah!
Happy secular Christmas, Brooke.
And one more thing. I hate James Dobson.
I hate James Dobson. Oh. This very special episode of I Hate James Dobson was written by my amazing co-host Brooke and recorded, edited, and produced by me, Jake. If you want to connect with us more, you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, and Blue Sky at I Hate James Dobson, and unfortunately still on Twitter at IHateJDobs. If you want to email us, you can do so at IHateJamesDobson@gmail.com. Special thanks to Lindsay, DJ, Drew, and Jack. Our theme music is by Mood Maze, and the song is called Trendsetter. Thank you for enjoying our show. Brooke, this was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me do it, and thank you for indulging me, readers.
This has been an idea that we've talked about for a while now.
Mhm.
Like, if Brooke's going to do an episode, it's got to be Christmas. It's got to be secular Christmas.
That's right.
I'm ending this feeling happy and warm.
Yay.
I don't think we're doing this right.
Yeah, something feels really weird about this. I'm teared up, but like with happiness and joy. Oh, it's almost like this is better.
You texted me yesterday, like, I had a beautiful conversation with my mom, and I said, oh, I love James Dobson.
That's right. And then we bandied around the idea of like, should we start a new podcast called I Love James Dobson?
It'll be about 3 seconds long.
And it would just say JK.
Oh.
Thank you, readers. Thank you, Jake. And everybody, merry whatever, happy holidays.
Happy Honda days.